welcome back to Girl Bones. So I'm still holding my microphone because I haven't fixed the stand or the arm or whatever that I'm using. It's really old and it's janky and it's just like a really cheap basic one. So I'm actually quite surprised that it has lasted as long as it has lasted. But I do need a new one. So hopefully for the next episode, I am making a video tomorrow, I think, about the boy moms of TikTok. It's gonna be a pure brain rot episode. I think every few weeks I throw in just like a brain rot episode of just like stupid shit I find on TikTok, but I do think the topic of boy moms is very interesting, especially given all of the Brooklyn Beckham situation going on and the Victoria Beckham being accused of being a boy mom or whatever. I don't know. But anyway, I feel like the annoying thing, I'm not going to do a deep dive on the Brooklyn Beckham thing because who cares? The thing that annoys me most about that is that no matter what position anyone takes, women are the root of the problem. You know, I don't see David Beckham being blamed or spoken about nearly as much as I see Victoria Beckham being dragged. I don't see anyone else. I don't see Brooklyn Beckham being blamed as much as I see his wife being blamed. So in every possible scenario, the root cause is the woman somehow. No matter what team you're on, no matter what side you're on, it's always the woman's fault. So I'm just like the misogyny that just like seeps into everything every day. Even with these like insane billionaire, millionaire, whatever people, I'm just like, oh my God, not bothered. But anyway, the topic of boy moms has been kind of circulating. I have a lot of videos saved. Anyone who knows me knows I love a good scroll anyway, so it's not hard work for me to scroll on TikTok. But I have found a lot of really unusual, alarming and interesting videos surrounding boy moms, and it's definitely a subject I wanted to talk about because I am a boy mom. I have a boy. He's almost 13. I'm not one of those boy moms, don't worry. I'm definitely not one of those boy moms. But anyway, so I think I'm going to make that video tomorrow. So make sure to check out my YouTube channel, check my Instagram. I'll have everything like linked in my stories or whatever. But anyway, life update. So anyone who's been listening to the podcast knows that I've been having car trouble. And anywho, this week I sold my car, the car that I've had for 8 years, and I bought my dream car, which is pretty fun and amazing, and I'm really proud of myself for doing that. But I wanted to talk about how easy it was, because I have been putting off this thing. I have been putting off selling my car, buying a new one. I've been putting that off for maybe the guts of a year, because I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to do it. It was too difficult, so much trouble. No. Part of the reason I didn't do it last year, like 12 months ago, was because I wasn't in the position to afford a new car, because I was not in a good situation with anything. And in the last 6 months, I've been coming back to myself and, you know, harvesting my energy back to myself. And I am in a position to do that for myself. Because of all of my energy being redirected back to me and not being drained or siphoned off to something else. So actually a year ago, I wasn't even in a position to buy anything, let alone a car. But 6 months of focusing on myself, I am in a position to do that. But I still was kind of like, I don't want to do that. That's too much work. I don't want to clean my car. I don't want to get it serviced. I don't want to get it ready to sell. Let's just keep things the way that they are, you know, like the car is fine. It had a little whoopsie doodle before Christmas. It got a new alternator, it got a new battery. The car's fine, like it's literally fine. And also it's a Toyota. If anyone doesn't know, I am Ireland's #1 Toyota fan. By the way, give me a sponsorship. I've been bugging them. I was like, they were doing, anyway, I won't get into that story. I don't do sponsorships. I used to do sponsorships when I was like actually doing Instagram, when I used to actually post on Instagram every single day. I did a few sponsorships, but I never got really into it, mostly because everything that I was being given was shit. And I was sponsored by a few like leggings companies for doing yoga and stuff, and all of the clothes would like rip through the crotch or whatever. I don't know. I was like, why would I try and promote these when they're so bad? But anyway, if anyone offered me a Toyota sponsorship, I would do that in a heartbeat. I would do that. That's I think that's the only person on earth right now I'd actually want to be sponsored by, but they don't know I exist, but it's fine. I know that they exist. We're manifesting that one day. Manifesting a Toyota sponsorship deal one of these days. But anyway, until then, I have bought my dream Toyota this week. But anyway, I want to talk about the process of how easy it was, because in my head I had built it up to be this really big thing, and that I have to clean my car, I have to get it serviced, I have to get it like prepared for the next owner, I have to deal with loads of people coming and looking at my car and like and like trying to get money off it, and the wheeler dealer situation, you know what I mean, a driveway sale. And I just didn't want to deal with that because it just sounded very stressful. And I've done it before. This is like not the first time I've sold a car. I've had like 5 or 6 cars in my driving career. But anyway, so it's not completely alien to me. And anyway, I put it up for sale at lunchtime, and I sold it at dinner time. So it was only for sale for like 3 hours, and then it was it was sold. So that part was so easy. I was like, okay, I was expecting it to be for sale for like a week minimum. I was expecting this to be like a journey. I was expecting this to be like a bit of a slog. You know, I wasn't expecting it to be up for a few hours. Anyway, next, part 1 done. Easy. That was great. Easy. Got my money, sold the car. Part 2, finding a new car. And anyway, my dream car was for sale about 4 minutes away from my house. I'm not joking. 4 minutes away from my house. My dream car within my price range, for sale, in the color that I wanted as well. I was like, does it get to be this easy? Does it actually get to be this easy? Yeah, turns out it actually does get to be that easy sometimes. And I had built it up in my head as like, this process is going to take so long. It's going to be so stressful. It's going to be so annoying. I'm going to have to talk to so many people. I'm going to have to drive across the country. Like, I'm going to find my perfect car, but it's going to be in like West Cork or something. And I'm going to have to drive for like all day. And maybe I won't be able to afford the car that I want. I'm going to have to buy one that might need like bits done to it. I'm gonna have to put more money into it. I don't know. Or maybe I'll have to buy a car and it needs the like hybrid batteries changed or so, whatever, you know what I mean? But no, my absolute dream car that I've wanted for about 5 years was for sale 4 minutes away from my house. And I messaged the person and said, is this car still for sale? She said, yeah. I said, can I come see it tomorrow? She said, yeah. And that was it. That was literally it. And it sometimes does get to be that easy. And I think sometimes I have the mindset sometimes of like the struggle. Things are really difficult. Things are really hard. Things are just like so stressful. This like mountain, this like Sisyphus, like never ending mountain that we're all climbing up and pushing this rock up a hill that never ends. This is our punishment for existence. This is our punishment. And everything is just really tough and nothing gets to be easy, but that has kind of rewired my brain a little bit. So now my new mantra is, no, sometimes it gets to be this easy. Sometimes it actually gets to be easy. And I think if you're like me and you're used to things sometimes being sticky and sometimes being more difficult and not coming as easily, perhaps, and sometimes things do feel like a struggle sometimes, or that you're just like trying to like trudge through this like really thick swampy water to try and get to the like clear spring where everything gets to be easy and crystal clear and smooth. Yeah, sometimes my brain goes there, like I don't even know what it is, where it's like the suffering and the struggling to deserve something or to earn something or whatever, instead of just thinking like, no, actually sometimes it gets to be really easy. And that just kind of showed me that it gets to be easy sometimes. Can I just let it be easy? Can I believe and let myself believe that some things are easy? Not everything needs to be dysregulation festival. Not everything needs to be crying and tears and struggling and suffering and over explaining and working really hard. Sometimes it gets to be easy. So I just want to pass on that message today before we begin. Anyway, I think that's enough of my intro. How's everyone doing? I went for a swim this morning for Women's Aid in Wicklow. There was a few women gathered to do a dip for Women's Aid, so that was really sweet. I haven't actually been in the water in quite a while, and I'm definitely a water person, and the cold water, if like, it feels really good to me. You know, sometimes with like some of these nervous system regulation techniques, they don't really apply to women. Like a lot of the studies on nervous system regulation and like they don't actually apply to women because they've never been tested on women. So for a lot of women who are following nervous system regulation tips and tricks and stuff, like a lot of that actually just applies to men. And a lot of the times when women get into very, very cold water, it does not have the same effect that has been studied on men, on the women's bodies. So anyway, that's me all caught up. I'm going to answer another question. If you want me to answer one of your questions, if you have a question for me that's related to anything nervous system, anything trauma, anything recovery, anything about relationships or attachment or anything like that, you can message me, send me a message at girlbonespodcast@gmail.com. girlbonespodcast@gmail.com. Send me your question or send me your scenario or whatever, and I will give you a deep dive, a ranty poo of an answer in one of my podcast episodes. So I'm answering this question today. I feel like I'm living more in my head than in my life. I keep replaying the same conversations, the same moments, the same if only I said this, if only I said that thoughts. I analyze what happened from every angle, trying to understand it properly so I can finally move on. But instead, I just feel more stuck. I do not know how to turn my brain off. I want to move forward, but I don't trust that I've understood the past enough to leave it behind. Why does my mind keep circling like this? And how do I actually let go and move forward? So that is the question that I'm answering today, and I have notes because this is something that I actually really want to talk about because I feel like so many people struggle with this and so many people will relate to this, including myself. So a lot of the times when I'm talking about stuff, I'm not just talking about like stuff that I've learned along the way doing yoga or doing all somatic therapy trainings or whatever. I'm not talking just about things that I've learned in a book or learned on a course. I'm talking about stuff that I've physically lived through myself, mentally, emotionally lived through myself, and had to figure out along the way. And some of the stuff that I'm talking about, I'm still figuring it out. So I don't want anyone to ever think that I'm some like high priestess or like some fucking like master therapist or something that's like telling you all what to do or giving you all this advice because I'm so perfectly healed and I have it all figured out. I'm literally talking to myself every single time when I'm doing a YouTube video or every single time when I'm doing any of these podcasts or doing anything. I'm also talking to myself. It's like another way for me to like reinforce in my brain everything that I've learned, everything that I know, and another way for me to cement that in and bring that with me forward. Do you know what I mean? It isn't, I hope no one ever gets the vibe that I'm just like know-it-all or this like wise village elder who does voodoo and knows everything and is so perfect. Like, not at all. I am trying also to do everything that I'm talking about. I'm still doing it too. We're doing it together. We're in the trenches together. And anyway, so that's the question that I wanted to talk about today. So I have my notes sectioned off into my answer is going to be in 3 separate parts. The first part is going to be talking about rumination, what that is, why we do it, and how can we stop ruminating. The second part I'm going to be talking about is the cycle of trauma. What happens in our body when we are traumatized, when we have a disruption in our regulation, in our peace, in our like everyday day-to-day life, when that gets disrupted by trauma or a traumatic event or from a significant trigger, emotional trigger, physical trigger, whatever, when we are disrupted in some way by abuse or by whatever the situation is, by being broken up with, by losing our job, whatever it is. Okay. It doesn't have to be like something devastating. It could just be something that is disruptive. And then we kind of stay stuck. It could be an argument with someone and we're like stuck on it. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be something life-changingly devastating. Okay. And then, so the first section, ruminating. Second section, cycle of trauma. The third section is going to be all about corrective experiences. Okay, so when we are the person who asked this question, there was more identifying details in that answer, but I just kind of took out all the answer and I kind of stripped it back bare bones, because we don't need to know the details. We don't need to know absolutely everything, because my answer will be the same regardless of the details, regardless of the specific examples. My answer will be the same. So when we are going over everything, when we're ruminating, when our thoughts are spiraling and circling and looping over and over and over again, what our brain is looking for is for an answer. It's looking for an answer. It's looking to make sense of what happened. And it's looking to kind of not control what happened, but it's looking to find some sort of like, okay, that makes sense. It's looking to find some sort of relief, some sort of conclusion to why was there this disruption? Why did this happen to me? And we haven't yet returned back to a place of safety, because we're still looking for the answer, and we cannot feel safe unless we have everything figured out. Another reason why we think about the same thing over and over and over again is potentially because of like to keep us hypervigilant, so that we don't get blindsided by the same situation again. If our brain keeps us like, remember this, it's doing that because it's trying to figure out why. And it's also like, don't forget about that. So if someone comes near us with the same energy that reminds us of the thing that we're thinking about, or the person that hurt us or whatever, we will know, keep this away from me, this isn't safe. So it's almost like a protection as well. It's not very useful. But that could be why it is going on as well. So maybe for you, it's one or the other or both. It could be trying to figure things out. It feels like from your question, it's trying to figure out, I'm trying to understand it properly so I can move on, but I just feel more stuck. I don't trust that I've understood the past enough to leave it behind. So it kind of feels like in this particular question, it is about trying to figure everything out, trying to make sense of everything. And so when people are ruminating like this, you will also, if you are sharing this with your friends and your family or your coworkers or whoever, if you are communicating and talking about the same thing over and over and over again, a lot of times people will say like, just move on. It's been 6 months. Let it go. You know, this kind of like forcing people to move on very quickly, forcing people to let things go that they're carrying. Sorry, all the sun just disappeared right now. Sorry. A lot of people, especially people who are not trauma informed and who do not understand that you can't just let something go. You can't just, if something is embedded in your subconscious, in your nervous system, some people can let it go. Some people can literally just decide, I'm done with this, I'm dropping it, it's not mine, bye. And a lot of people cannot. A lot of people need to complete the trauma cycle, which we're going to talk about next, in order to return back to a place of safety, in order to be able to slowly let it go over time with corrective experiences, which is what we're also going to talk about next. But anyway, what happens, why some people can't actually just let it go? Because if you've been traumatized, trauma actually causes changes in the brain. It isn't just like, oh, that was really bad, yeah, poor me, anywho, let's keep it rolling. Some people have the ability to do that. I do not. I need to process. I need to think. I need to ruminate, even though it's not good for you. I need to complete the cycle. I need to regulate. I need to go back to a place of safety. I need to learn new experiences. I need to teach myself this. I am not someone who can just decide, this doesn't bother me anymore and I'm not going to think about it anymore. I am not that person. So I completely understand when people cannot let things go, or when people are not ready to let it go yet, because you I don't know, maybe some people can just force themselves to do that. I am not one of those people. So if you are one of those people, that's great. If you're not, then you can keep listening. But the reason why it's very difficult for people to actually let it go is because of the changes that happen in your nervous system, because of the changes that happen in your brain. Trauma literally rewires your brain. So your amygdala, which is responsible for detecting threats, and it's also responsible for responding to fear. So this can become enlarged after, like physically enlarged, after you have been traumatized, and it also gets hyperactive it can get hyperactive after we've experienced a significant disruption or a trauma. So it can also get really hyperactive and therefore disrupts our ability to accurately detect threats and accurately respond to fear or danger. Prefrontal cortex also gets damaged from being traumatized, and this is the part of our brain that is responsible for making decisions and also controlling our emotions. So when this gets disrupted or damaged, it can be really hard to think clearly and make clear decisions. Also, our hippocampus can get damaged as well, which is responsible for our memory. It's also responsible for deciphering the past and present memories. So this is in the past, that happened in the past, and this is happening in the present. So when it gets damaged, those things can all muddle up and we can't tell the difference between like what's happened in the past and what's currently happening to us right now, the second. It can also shrink. The hippocampus can actually shrink after trauma. And when it's not functioning properly, it can cause more intrusive thoughts, intrusive memories, and like flashbacks and that kind of stuff. So all of this like damage to the brain and damage to the functions of those particular parts of the brain, it causes more damage as well. But this isn't like a science podcast, and I'm also not a doctor, and anyway, blah blah blah. But that's just like the bare bones of some of the stuff that happens to your brain when you are trying to recover from trauma after you've experienced a trauma. So all of these things can contribute to ruminating, to thinking and getting stuck in these loops, not being able to see things clearly, not being able to decipher the past versus the present, not being able to like let things go, not being able to see things clearly, and not being able to rationally, logically make sense of things in a way that might contribute to moving forward, if you know what I mean. So like ruminating, going over things over and over and over again, it is a trauma response. It can be a trauma response. There's also like if you have OCD and that kind of thing, like that also can be a part of why someone is ruminating. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm not here to talk about OCD. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm talking specifically for people who are doing it because of an unfair situation, an unjust situation, and a situation that never got completed. So we're going to move on and we're going to talk about the trauma cycle and what actually happens to our bodies when we go through a trauma and how the cycle needs to complete itself. So when we're like living our life, so say this is us circling, living our life, just being normal, our everyday stability, our everyday safety, our everyday familiar life patterns. When a trauma happens and that gets disrupted, our cycle gets disrupted and there's a break in the cycle. And what our body is trying to do, what our brain is trying to do, is to complete the loop and come back to a place of safety, which is also why we can ruminate, because we're trying to find answers that make sense. We're trying to go over everything so that we can find a logical reason why that happened and make sense of it to be able to that makes sense. Okay, I can continue. I can keep going. I'm safe again. I've made sense of everything. I'm okay to keep going. When the disruption happens, whatever it is, you've been in a car crash, you've been like in an abusive situation, whatever the situation is that caused the disruption to your everyday regulation, like just like state, whatever the disruption is, when that happens, your body is flooded with adrenaline and cortisol, which can put us into like a fight or flight nervous system response, fight or flight, freeze, fawn, whatever, nervous system response. And we are trying to find our way back to a place of safety, back to a place of rest and digest, okay, which does not include cortisol and adrenaline. So what can happen sometimes if someone has ever been in a trauma bond situation? So I just want to say something. The term trauma bond has been misused. People think that if you share trauma with someone that you are trauma bonded and that therefore your relationship is unhealthy. That's not what that means at all. It's completely normal, natural to bond with someone over shared trauma. That's not what a trauma bond is. A trauma bond is if you are with some, like, just the easiest example to use is daddy issues. Okay, if you were neglected as a child and your needs were not emotionally met by your dad, so therefore now you have daddy issues in your relationships with men, and you are bonding with someone based off your previous trauma the situation that you're in now is reminding you on some level of your past trauma. You are subconsciously repeating the patterns of your previous trauma in the present, and you're hoping to like heal backwards, create a new experience with this person to try and make a corrective experience that you didn't get in the original trauma. That's what a trauma bond actually is. So actually just sharing trauma with someone and bonding about that doesn't actually mean that you are in a trauma bond. Anyway, the reason why trauma bonds are so addictive is because that chemical cycle. If there's a disruption in the peace of the relationship because the abuser has done something awful, and now there's loads of stress, there's loads of cortisol, there's loads of adrenaline, and then they say sorry, and then you reconcile, and then it comes back to this place of relief and peace, and your body is then flooded with all of these like good chemicals, endorphins, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, whatever, and then that's only temporary, and then there's another disruption. So it's actually these chemical highs and lows that keep people addicted in their trauma bond. That's why it's not easy to leave a trauma bond. If someone is in a trauma bond situation, they're basically in active addiction, and it isn't just like he's a dickhead, leave him. Someone's body has become physically dependent on that person because of the highs and lows, because of these dopamine crashes, because of this like intermittent reinforcement. There's so much going on that keep people stuck in abusive cycles. Anyway, blah blah blah. I just wanted to talk about that as well, because I think most people can understand that. When I talk about relationships or toxic relationships, people will be like, yeah, well, that makes sense. Okay, so the trauma cycle. When we experience a disruption, when we experience a disruption to our peace, a disruption to our happiness, whatever it is, a massively significant trauma, or maybe an argument with someone, doesn't matter. We're flooded with cortisol, we're flooded with adrenaline. We're put into a sympathetic nervous system response, which is the fight or flight nervous system response. So what happens then, in order to complete the cycle and bring us back to a place of rest and digest, parasympathetic, we're trying to find answers, we're trying to find a justification, we're trying to make sense of it, which is why we start ruminating, and we want to try and understand. We just want to try and understand. So rumination actually does make sense. Rumination actually does, like physiologically in the body, like it does make sense. It is so not good for us though. It is really not a good place to be. And as someone who has experienced rumination before, and I have not just been able to like let things go and move on, and I've really wanted to make sense of everything, to try and find some way of justifying what happened or explaining it in some way, making sense of it in some way. It's not easy to just be like, let go, move on, just stop thinking about it. It doesn't work that way. It would be great if it did, but for me it does not work that way. So when we are trying to come back to this place of safety, the disruption happens, we're flooded, we're in fight or flight, our body is trying to loop, our body is trying to complete this trauma loop and come back to a sense of safety. We have to make sure that there's places that we have a safe and healthy idea and measure for what safety actually means for us, which is why I'm going to start talking about corrective experiences. So a visual representation of a trauma cycle completing itself is if you've ever seen a deer being chased and it gets away, and then immediately when it comes to a place of safety, it will actually shake its body, and it will like physically try and to release, shake off all of that excess energy. This is where somatic therapy comes into it, okay? The deer are doing somatic therapy. They know, they're really clever. If a deer gets chased by a bear or a lion or whatever, and it makes it away, very often you will see them shaking. Or if a mouse escapes from being chased by a cat, you will see them shaking their bodies as a way to release all of that excess cortisol, all of that excess adrenaline that got built up in the fight or flight. They needed it to run away. They needed it in order to reach that place of safety. And a way for them to try and come back to a place of safety is to try and physically shake it off, which is why, again, somatic therapy is really important. So that is definitely something we can do to try and squeeze out all of that excess those stress chemicals that we don't need anymore. I'm going to talk about that more a little bit later on when we get to the actual solution. So for right now, I'm just kind of yapping. I'm just kind of trying to explain everything. So let's move on to corrective experiences. What does that mean? How do we do it? And some like real life examples of what corrective experiences actually mean. So our bodies become really, our brains and our nervous systems are hardwired to choose something that is familiar, even if it's really bad for us and even if it is not good at all. So we are way more likely to choose something familiar, even if it's toxic, even if it's abusive, even if it's awful. We're more likely to lean over in that direction than we are to lean over into something completely new and unfamiliar. Even if the new situation could potentially be really good for us, we're still way more likely to lean into the familiar hell than we are to possibly lean over to an unfamiliar paradise. You know, that is just the way the brain works. That is just the way that's just the way the nervous system works. And it's designed for safety, because familiarity feels safe, even if through our lived experiences we've learned that actually it's not safe to be over there with that person, even though it feels familiar, even though it feels like home. I've learned over and over and over again that actually that's not good for me. It's not good for me over there. But the idea of not choosing it feels very difficult, because the familiarity is what pulls us in. The familiarity feels like home. The familiarity is the thing that like it creates this false sense of safety. And the unfamiliar path, which doesn't include whatever that is, the unfamiliar path, even though it could be paradise, because it's unfamiliar, and we don't have any past experience over here, it feels unsafe because we don't know what's over there. Okay, so that is why we need to start doing corrective experiences. It's one thing to get to the point of I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to choose that anymore. I'm so over it. I know logically that this is not good for me. I know logically that I don't want to be in this situation anymore. I do not want this cycle to repeat itself. I do not want this pattern to be the pattern that I follow for the next 10, 15, 20 years of my life. Even if I've been following it for the last 10, 15, 20 years, I don't want it to continue. It is one thing to logically name that and state it, but it is another thing to familiarize ourselves with something that is healthy and actually good for us. That's really difficult, and that's why corrective experiences are so uncomfortable, because even if we go back to something that is so bad for us, there's a level of comfort there because we're so used to it. We've acclimatized to this situation, and it feels like home. Even though it's hell, it feels like home. So if whenever the day comes that we decide I don't want to do that anymore, I want to do something new and I want to try something new, we have to put ourselves out there to create new experiences and to shift and update our internal settings about what safety actually means. So if our settings are set to, our old settings or our current settings are set to, safety feels like someone calling me a bitch. Safety, I'm used to feeling safe with someone who treats me like shit. I'm used to feeling safe with someone who does this, and this. I'm used to someone always letting me down. I'm used to someone invalidating me. I am used to someone ignoring my emotions. I'm used to that. That for me feels safe. That's what I've been hardwired to believe is safety based on my past experiences and what I've tolerated and what I've adjusted my settings to. That is my measure for safety because I'm used to that. Even though it's awful, I'm used to it. And in order for me to update my settings and to create a new system setting, a new measurement, a new level of what safety means, a new barometer or whatever for what safety means in my new updated settings, I'm going to have to go and actually make new experiences and update my settings, which feels really, 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 really uncomfortable. When we first start doing this, when we first start trying to make corrective experiences and we start trying to introduce new people in, or put ourselves out there, or do something to try and update our system settings and to familiarize ourselves with a new sense of safety, a new measure of safety, it will feel really uncomfortable, and we will probably be met with a lot of resistance because we're just not used to it. We're just not used to it at all. Because at first, the new thing, which might be really healthy for us, it might be so much better for us, it just feels unsafe and it feels really unfamiliar because we're so used to dealing with something else. This happens slowly over time when we repeatedly put ourselves in situations where our system gets to update itself. One day at a time, one new experience at a time, one date at a time, one walk in the park at a time, whatever it is. I'm going to give a list of examples of corrective experiences now, but whatever it is, it's repeatedly doing that, consistently doing that, will eventually create new patterns, a new standard and a new measure of what safety actually feels like in our body, and update our internal settings. Okay, so that way when we adjust to this new level of safety, this is now my standard for safety, this is now my standard for regulation, this is now my familiar paradise. When someone comes towards us with something that we used to be used to, but now we've updated our settings, if someone from the past comes forward, or someone who feels like, oh, this person is really dysregulated, or this person is not emotionally available at all, this person is verbally, emotionally abusive, or whatever, if someone like that comes forward to us again and we have our new system settings updated, that will not feel attractive and that will not feel familiar at all. That will be so off-putting, and because we've updated our system settings. So what are some examples of corrective experiences? If you are used to having your emotions invalidated, if that's what you're used to, if you're used to sharing a truth or sharing your emotions or sharing how you feel, and you're used to someone shutting you down or laughing at you or completely dismissing you or arguing with you about why you're wrong, if you're used to that and that's what you've become familiar with, a new corrective experience would be being open and vulnerable to share your emotions with other people. And if you shared your emotions with someone new, or with a therapist, or with a trusted friend or whatever, and you are met with attunement, and you are met with kindness and understanding, and you are met with a hug and a cup of tea, and someone who's trying to understand you, and someone who wants to take the time to actually understand you and not dismiss you entirely, that is a corrective experience. That won't happen overnight. Even if you have just one corrective experience like that, it probably won't rewire your entire brain and your entire nervous system, but you're starting to rewire it now. The thing is, that will feel really uncomfortable. That will feel really uncomfortable to do that, and really, like, again, you might have a lot of resistance in your body, but it's by doing this consistently, repeatedly, and taking the risk to put ourselves out there and to try and open ourselves up to have these new experiences that we actually start to put a new memory over the old memory, and we start to update our system settings for what safety actually feels like. What is our standard for safety? How are we internally recognizing safety in our bodies? So that's an example of a corrective experience. So another example of corrective experience would be if you were used to, this is like a smaller example or whatever, but if you were used to doing something with your abusive ex, and now you can't do that anymore because it reminds you too much of the past, or like it reminds you too much of your time with that person, to do it again, even if it's like going to the cinema, or ordering a pizza, or watching a particular show, or listening to a particular album or whatever, I can't do that, it's too triggering. You need to create a corrective experience instead of just keeping that thing attached to that person. Now you've made a new memory. So I'll give you an example for me. There's a particular road that me and my ex used to drive down on the way to go see his family. And when the first time I drove through that road, not with him, it was so triggering. It was so triggering because I associated this drive with him. But actually, I've driven on that road a few times, and it's been to go see my friend who lives like kind of close. And so that I've had corrective experiences on that road that have nothing to do with him, and that now when I'm on that road, I have put like a new memory on top of the old memory, so that way it's not associated necessarily as much with him anymore. And that will keep happening. The more I go on that road, happy to go see my friend, I won't associate that journey with him anymore. And another example would be, I used to listen to, when I was like a teenager and I was not in a good place at all, I used to listen to The Field a lot, and I used to love them when I was a teenager, but then I couldn't listen to them anymore when I was like in my early 20s. I was like, that is so triggering. I can't listen to that anymore. It makes me feel like I'm 15 and not having a good day. And then when I started listening to it when I was like in the gym, and I started listening to it again when I was just going for walks and like with a new group of friends, and like created corrective experiences to rewire my brain into like putting a new memory on top of an old memory, if that kind of makes sense. And I'm not 15 anymore, I'm 34. I'm not 15 anymore, I'm 34. I'm not with this person anymore, I'm by myself and I'm going to see my friend. Do you know what I mean? So there's loads of different ways of making corrective experiences, but it does help to complete that trauma cycle. If something is up in the air and the trauma hasn't found itself yet, sometimes these things can still be very triggering if we are associating them with a certain person, or if we are used to a familiar hell and we really want to start creating new familiar sensations and new familiar feelings with something that is actually really good for us and actually really safe and actually genuinely really healthy. So getting back to the rumination. So how do we actually stop ruminating, and how do we actually stop going over the same things over and over and over again, trying to come to a place of understanding and a place of safety in the body? What we can actually do is, there's a few things that we can do. This is where I'm going to bring the somatic aspect into it as well. Okay, so what we can actually do is disrupt those thoughts before they have a chance to spiral. And even if we haven't disrupted them and they are actually spiraling, and we do notice ourselves like getting really anxious and getting really worked up and trying to think about, I should have said this, or I should have said this, or why did they say this? Why didn't I do this? What did they mean? Da, 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 da. What if this? What if that? Why did they do that? That's so unfair. What we can do is actually disrupt those thoughts by saying, I don't know, or stop, or something like that. Just to be like, none of my business. I don't know. You can literally think of whatever works for you. I like to say, I don't know. If I'm trying to figure out, why did they do that? Why did that happen? I can just say, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And say that physically out loud, like get your vocal cords working. That will stimulate your vagus nerve as well, which helps with emotional regulation. But literally saying, I don't know. So if you're driving and you start to spiral and your thoughts start to spiral, literally say out loud, I don't know. Or you can literally just say, stop. I like I don't know though, because it is actually kind of an answer. You know, you're looking for an answer. The answer is, I don't know. I literally don't know. And that's one way of disrupting it. Another thing we can do is to physically move our body. What can I do right now that might help me get rid of some of these thoughts? Like the deer shaking off after it's been chased and it survives and it's at this place of relief and it wants to remove all the excess cortisol, and it wants to shake off all of that excess adrenaline that the body is flooded with in order to keep it alive. Well, we can do something similar. We can shake, we can run, we can stomp our feet. That's another way of actually disrupting those thoughts. It's like transmuting the energy from our brains into our body and actually expressing it outwards. And if we do that enough times, will we be able to completely stop ruminating? Will we be able to completely stop the mind spiral? No, maybe, I don't know, but we don't have to. We just have to give ourselves tools and tips and tricks that we can use and we can keep in our toolbox for when we need them. And it seems really unfair. I know trauma, it just is not fair. And it's kind of the unfairness of it all that makes it hard to deal with as well, because it's like, I would have never done that to you. Why did you do that? You literally fucked up my brain. And now I am responsible for using my time, my energy, my money, my resources, my precious time on this earth I need to spend recovering because of decisions that you made, because of how you decided to treat me. I have to, like, it's up to me now to fix it. And that's really unfair. And the injustice of trauma as well is really hard. Because sometimes it's not even like, if it's about a particular person, people won't even be like, oh my God, that person, I miss them, I love them, I'm so heartbroken about them. It's not even that anymore. You get to a point where you're like, that's not even the case anymore. I'm just so pissed off how unfair that was. And I'm so pissed off about how none of that needed to happen. And why did you do that? It's like that kind of starts to come into it after you've been healing for a while, and you don't even like, you're not even heartbroken anymore. You're just left with the mess that you need to clean up. And it is your mess that you need to clean up, and you didn't make it, but it is, unfortunately, that's just the way it works. And anyway, so those are a few things that you can do when you notice that your mind starts spiraling, to try and think of a phrase, I don't know, or I'll figure it out later, or the answer will become clear to me at some point, but I don't have to figure it out now. I think I don't know is good though, because it's also building this capacity to deal with uncertainty, and that is a really good thing to be able to do, to deal with uncertainty. I don't know the answer. I wish I did, but I don't know. I'm not going to figure it out now. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm not going to figure it out now. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go meet my friends. I'm going to just like go put my body somewhere else. And I'm not going to sit in my room spiraling all day to try and figure out why someone did something to me. Like, no, I'm going to say, I don't know. I'm going to disrupt those thoughts. I'm going to prevent a spiral or stop a spiral, do my best to try and stop a spiral, even if I'm in the middle of one. Yeah, I think I don't know is a really good one, because it does kind of teach our bodies, like, even though I don't know the answer and I can't figure it out and I can't come to a place of understanding, I can't make sense of it, I don't know, but I'm going to keep going anyway, even though I'm admitting that I don't know the answer, and I'm admitting that I can't figure it out. I'm admitting that I can't solve the problem, that I can't make sense of it. I don't know. Even though I don't know, I will be fine. I'm going to get up and go for a walk anyway. I'm going to get up and make my dinner anyway. I'm going to disrupt that by saying I don't know. And I'm building my capacity to accept uncertainty and to live with uncertainty. Because a lot of the times the answer that we're looking for is, some people are just fucking assholes. That is the answer that a lot of us are looking for. People are fucking assholes. Some people are fucking assholes. And for us to try and make sense of, well, why are they assholes? Why? I don't know. Say I don't know and literally go do something else. But yeah, so anyway, and then you can bring the body into it as well with somatics. This is why somatics is so important, to get out of the head and get into the body and actually like physically create the space for these uncomfortable emotions, physically transmute it and pass it on to something else. We can literally pick up stones and throw them in the water. That is somatic. That can be somatic therapy. We can stomp our feet. We can just go for a walk. We can move our bodies. We can do jumping jacks. Every time we have an intrusive or not intrusive thought, every time we start to ruminate, can we just do 10 push-ups? Can we jump up and down, do 10 jump squats? Do something to disrupt that pattern of slipping into the spiral, and get out of our heads and into our bodies, like the deer shaking off after it's gotten free. Can we do something to like physically discharge and squeeze all of this excess fight or flight chemicals that we don't need? Can we squeeze them out of our bodies and try our best to return to a place of safety, and making sure that the safety that we are returning to is actually a healthy safety, not a familiar hell safety, a false sense of safety. And if we are finding ourselves stuck, getting pulled back into these familiar places of hell that we know are not good for us, we need corrective experiences. Step 1, admit to yourself that we are being pulled into these familiar toxic abuse cycles or toxic patterns or whatever, and that we don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. This is not my life. This is not the way that I want to be loved forever. This is not what I deserve. I'm not doing it anymore. Step 1. Step 2, corrective experiences. And that's really difficult. Step 1 is very hard. Step 2 is really difficult. So it isn't easy. So for anyone that's out there doing that, I love you. I'm so proud of you. And it's not easy. It's not easy, but we're doing it and we'll be fine. And yeah, Sorry if this was kind of triggering episode. I feel like I've needed to hear all of this as well. So sometimes when I'm talking and I'm like looking through all the answers, I'm like, oh, this resonates with me. This is why with the like somatic therapy stuff that I do, I haven't actually done it in a few months actually, and I'll tell that story why I haven't actually been doing somatic therapy. I took down my website and sorry, I'm probably gonna cry, but I'm actually completely fine. But I took down my website because I was like taking on clients and like I work with women who have been in like abuse situations or like toxic relationship situations, or that's not what I like advertised, but that is the people who like came to me. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So I work with like relational trauma. That includes the relationship we have with ourselves as well. It's not just like relationships, but I actually started to kind of feel like I was a little bit of a fraud or something for because at the time I took down my website like 7 or 8 months ago because I felt like I was helping these women and my clients, and then I was also in a situation where I was not being treated very well, and I felt like a fraud, to be honest. And I felt like everything I had learned, all of the ways that I could like help other people, I wasn't like applying it to myself, and it was really difficult to leave. It was very, very difficult to leave, but I did. And but that's why I took down my website, and that's why I haven't been taking on like somatic therapy clients, because I actually felt like I was lying, or I felt like I was a fraud or something, because here I was in a situation where I wasn't being considered, I wasn't being prioritized, I wasn't being there was no effort being made for me. I wasn't being looked after properly at all, without going into detail. And that was like half of my life, and the other half of my life I was this like somatic therapist for women, and I was like giving all this advice and giving all of these like giving all these ways to like help women to recover from things that I was like currently in. So it was just like a kind of a horrible thing to deal with, and that's why I just like I took down my website, and I kind of realized that like I actually need to do this on myself now, and get my own therapist, and get myself back in a position to not like practice what I preach, because it's like, again, it's like it's really difficult to leave trauma bond situations, and I have so much grace for myself. I'm not like calling myself an idiot for not leaving sooner or whatever. That's not what I'm trying to do, but it just felt like this weird situation where I was like talking to all these women, and people were messaging me all the time, like telling me like their trauma and their situations and like abuse or toxic dysfunctional like patterns or whatever, and it was just like, I'm in that right now, and I'm not in a position to like help anyone right now. I'd been working very, very hard. I have been working very hard on myself since I had my son, which is like 13 years ago, almost 13 years ago. And then for the last almost 6 years been studying somatic therapy and relational trauma, and then to be in a relationship and just to kind of have everything like broken down. So I have like endless understanding for people who are in that situation. I have endless understanding for people who cannot get out of that situation, and I actually feel like whenever I do get myself back into a stronger position, like internally, I feel like I'm there. Like I know I'm like crying and I'm like, I'm fine, but I actually do feel a lot stronger. But I feel like I'll actually be a much better somatic therapist kind of, you know, whether that's like in a month from now I might put back up my website, or in maybe in spring or something I might run a somatic group for women. And this is what I'm talking about when I say that, like, everything that I speak about, I'm not just talking about like stuff that I've read on the internet or stuff that I've learned from my professors that I've worked with in the past, or stuff that I've learned in like textbooks or whatever. Like, this is what I'm talking about is like like, I know what I'm talking about because I've like experienced it. And yeah, so I just wanted to say that as well. That's why I actually took down my website and I stopped advertising, because I actually felt like a fraud, and I felt like I wasn't doing any of those things because I couldn't. I wasn't doing any of the things that I knew that I should be doing because I actually couldn't. And now I can. Now I definitely can. And I have been. And I feel like actually I will be in a much better position whenever I decide to like put back up my website or like take more clients on again or whatever. I think I'm actually going to run like a group, like maybe get a group of like 5 women or 10 women or something to meet every week or every 2 weeks or something, or maybe to have like loads of women, maybe 50 and try and keep it affordable, and try and get people in on a Zoom call, like a somatic therapy crybaby session or something. I don't know, I'll think of something. But yeah, anyway, didn't mean to cry on the internet. It's been a good while since I've cried on the internet. Anyway, I'll probably end this now before I start talking about more stuff. But I will see you in the next episode. So keep an eye on my other YouTube channel. Keep an eye on my main channel. And I will be talking about boy moms tomorrow. So I'm going to end this now, and hopefully I'll have this uploaded tonight. And yeah, I will talk to you soon. And if you want me to if you have a question or a scenario that you want me to go over and you want me to explain it from a feminist somatic therapy lens, let me know, and you can email me at girlbonespodcast@gmail.com. I will see you in the next episode.